Well, yeah, I mean, the interesting part was the last week, that sort of $110 billion, almost dollar for dollar value from Microsoft, or from Google rather, to Microsoft, which is interesting. But also interesting is the $338 billion, is it, that Microsoft has increased just from the announcement of the $1 billion into ChatGPT, right? And I mean, that's extraordinary. So I feel like this is pretty much overdone. I am a Google holder, right, shareholder. That's a big position. So I feel like obviously I have somewhat of a bias there. But I think that this is sort of front-running what may or may not be a huge shift of market share.
You know, it's interesting. When Google gapped down 6% after their Paris event. That was an astoundingly large move on one thing that, and a lot of it was juxtaposed to kind of Microsoft's events the prior day that seemed to go really well. This ChatGPT has, it really has captured the imagination of not just the tech world, but beyond it. And so when you think about those two events, you'd say to yourself, okay, well, one has a lead and the other doesn't. And to your point, Karen, Microsoft now has committed so much capital to this and is also getting rebates for their cloud services, that sort of thing. We're not going to see any material shift in market share as it relates to search, I don't think, based on these kind of products that we've seen deployed over the last couple weeks on these things. But I guess what I would say is, and I talked about it on Thursday, I mean, I put on a pairs trade where I was short Microsoft and long Google, and that was working out really well on Friday. But then when you see, to your point, you used the term surge, Melissa, that stock gapped up today, Microsoft, 1.5%. At one point, it was up 4%. In market cap terms, that is just massive. So there are huge bets that are being made about the future, but I just don't believe right now that makes a whole heck of a lot of sense. And that's why I put that trade on. But right now, Microsoft really feels like it's kind of off to the races, and Google acts very poorly still. But again, this is not like a sort of here and now effect, I don't think, that we're going to see in the earnings over the nenext, couple quarters.
Sure. Well, just one thing to add, though. I mean, Google really shot themselves in the foot with that sort of, not fully baked, rollout.
AI, yeah.
With the, and there's the perception that Google is so far behind in the AI race, and that is not the case. They have been. I mean, AI is incorporated in all of their products, and so we have this big term AI, but it's such a, it's such a pervasive term, pervasive technology already there. But it seems like Alphabet has just really sort of done a terrible job of spinning the story. They're not really spinning it, then they shouldn't spin it. Wait, have some good spin when you have it, but, don't go off sort of half-cocked.
They seem to have lost the narrative just a touch, when those memos started to go out and it was reported that they were calling back the founders guy. But, at this point, the markets are forward-looking, right? And so if we look into the future, do we see that Microsoft is putting a better foot forward in terms of its stake in AI and how it is thinking about AI versus how Alphabet appears to be thinking about AI in terms of how it has put its foot forward, and it was very underwhelming for investors.
Yeah, I mean, your point about them seemingly panicking by bringing back the founders, I think the market sort of seized upon that, and again, sold first, asked questions later. I mean, some of the Google problems are clearly Google and the businesses they're in specific. And if the only arena that these two companies were vying for business in were AI, I could understand this move, but it's not. Microsoft is now a $2 trillion company, and one has to wonder how meaningful this will be maybe 10 years from now. Yes, over the next couple of years, I'm not so sure. So it comes down to, I think, what are you willing to pay? And as Dan put on that pairs trade last week, just in terms of the math, at current levels, Microsoft is trading close to 25 times next year's numbers, assuming that they make that. And if you go back and listen to the conference call, there's still some question as to whether or not they're going to be able to get there. And I've said it 100 times. I think Microsoft is one of the 5, if not 3 most important companies in the world. But does it deserve this kind of valuation? On the flip side, now Google at either side of 16 times next year's numbers, at a certain point, valuations are going to matter. And I think Dan may have been a couple days early last week, but I think he's looking at it the correct way.
Right here, right now, Grasso, Alphabet or Microsoft?
I knew you were coming with a would you rather here. So right here, right now, I would go with Alphabet, only because the damage, Karen said it's a little bit long in the tooth, or I'm paraphrasing, a little overdone. It hit its 50-day moving average, trade a little bit below 94.13. or thereabouts for its 50-day. I would like to play it from the standpoint of the stock that got hit the hardest off of this news. Both of them broke out to the upside from declining trend lines. Both of them did not have the same scenario after the fact. Google obviously broke down. Microsoft continued to break out. But this is about search. AI is about search. So Google's not getting their lunch stolen from them right now, but their lunch is search. And if AI is going to have the keys to that vehicle going forward, that's why it's such a big deal. And that's why Google collapsed on such a bad outing when they showed off what they did have, which showed what they didn't have.